Now imagine, it's late one night. You're driving as fast as you can to the docks to deliver a $60 million can of shaving cream. Don't ask what's inside. In your haste, you run off the road and wreck your sweet Jeep. As you get out to inspect the damages, you hear something rustling in the bushes behind you. What emerges is this cute little dinosaur. Aww, little guy. And he's curious. What a cute little fella. And next thing you know, he opens his nice little cute frills and spits acid into your eyes. And now you're blind in the middle of the woods with a Jeep that's off the road because for whatever reason you don't know how to drive. And now you're going to get eaten by a 3-foot-tall Dilophosuarus. If you can't tell, or dear God, you're too young to remember, this scene is from the iconic movie Jurassic Park. And this is where most people, myself included, first were introduced to the Dilophosaurus. Despite not having a huge amount of screen time, the Dilophosaurus became just an icon for the Jurassic Park series. And everyone all around the world, paleontologist lovers and regular people alike, just love it so much. And that love for the Dilo, and also including a very convincing commenter, has led me into doing more research into Dilos and just learning more about this amazing dinosaur. And right off the bat, I'm going to tell y'all something crazy. Please sit down. Hollywood lied. I know, this is a lot to take in, but it's insane how much Jurassic Park the movie got wrong about these little guys. And also, the Dilo is like one of the only dinosaurs in the movie franchise that was nerfed compared to their real life counterpart, which is crazy. Everything else they gave them steroids, but for the Dilo they're like, nah, not you, buddy, not you. But I'm getting ahead of myself. First off, we need to establish some history. And since I love lists so much, we'll be going over the discovery, we'll be going over its anatomy, and we'll be going over its cultural impact and significance. Because, believe it or not, the Dilophosaurus weatherelli is a huge deal. I didn't realize how big it was. Pun intended. Until I started doing research into it. So, hopefully you'll learn something new. Thank you for watching. And without further ado, let's get into it. So, like many fossils, it's hard to concrete say when it was discovered, but that's not going to stop me from jotting a random date down. In 1940, a Navajo man named Jesse Williams, no, not the guy from Grey's Anatomy, but we will be using his face because I couldn't find Mr. Williams' actual face to put on the model, so our first celebrity guest appearance, I guess, discovered 3 dinosaur skeletons in northern Arizona. He simply observed the bones, told other people what he saw, and went about his day. It wasn't until 1942 when Mr. Williams would be asked to lead a group of paleontologists to the bones. This was so that the bones could be properly identified and excavated. 3 of those paleontologists were Dr. Charles Camp, Mr. Bill Rush, and Mr. Ed Cott. What they discovered was 3 skeletons roughly 20 feet from each other in a triangular shape. The first one was a near-complete skeleton with a destroyed frontal skull. That's very important for later. The second skeleton was in a much better condition, and the skull, although was slightly damaged, was way better, and even showcased 2 iconic ridges on top of it. And finally, the third skeleton was too eroded to really use and was mostly just pieces of vertebra. All 4 men quickly got to work and started excavating the bones, but during the process, Mr. Jesse Williams left for several days. It was near the end of the excavation process where they were, brushing the bones, kind of removing the dirt. Most of the heavy lifting was already done. And this struck the other men as kind of weird, but they continued to work. We'll touch back on this later, trust me, it's important. And really cool. After only 10 days of digging, the fossils were removed and brought to a university. Now, originally these bones were misidentified as being part of the Megalosaurus family and was named Megalosaurus weatherelli by Samuel Wells in 1954. And the word weatherelli comes from John Wetherill, a cattle rancher and amateur archaeologist from Colorado who helped discover several ancient Native American sites, like the Spruce Tree, the Cliff Palace, and several others. So they basically just turned his last name into a Latin word and was like, hey, let's roll with it. It wasn't until 1970 that they realized this was not part of the Megalosaurus family, but its own separate theropod. The name was then changed to Dilophosuarus weatherelli, meaning two-crested lizard, because they had two crests. Look, science nerds are not known for their creativity. Let's just be happy it's not the king lizard, you know? This isn't even like a past thing. The scientific name for a gorilla is gorilla. We haven't changed. We've already established that Hollywood lies. The Dilophosaurus does not look anything like its Jurassic Park counterpart. In the movies, Dilos were roughly 3 feet tall and 8.5 feet long. They were considered small predators and used various mechanisms to hunt their prey. First, they had their iconic brightly colored neck frills that they would expand and shake to make an intimidating sound while also appearing to be bigger than what they are. Then, they had a venomous spit that they would use to blind their prey before going in for the kill. And if you put all that together, you have a really cool and unique dinosaur. But it's all wrong. Like every last bit of it. Every last bit of it. Well, not everything. The two crests on the head is correct, and the general shape is close. And they got the name right. So that's pretty good, right? Yeah, that's pretty good. But for real though, no man, they got a lot wrong. So for starters, the Dilophosaurus was roughly 6 to 7.5 feet tall. So about the size of your average stop sign. Or, that's hard to visualize, about the size of an ostrich. Or, me on my old Tinder profile. And they were roughly from snout to tail 20 feet long, which is about as long as your standard shipping container. And as you can imagine, they were pretty big, so they most likely weighed a lot. We're thinking roughly 800 to 900 pounds, which is more than your average adult grizzly bear. And for my non-American friends who don't use pounds, I'm so sorry, and they don't have grizzly bears just outside to, use as a reference, that's gotta be roughly about the same as like 3 Boris Johnsons. Which, side tangent, when I was writing this joke, I looked up this dude's weight and Google said, and I quote, 17 stones and 6 pounds. I'm sorry, but since when were y'all using stones to measure people's weights? And that's coming from an American. Like, we use pizza to measure everything. Stop adding new metrics, okay? Just keep what you got, alright? Please. And yes, I did calculate how many pizzas it would be. It's 15 large pizzas from Domino's. I will literally use anything but the metric system. Or stones. Starting at the head, the Dilo's most notable feature was its 2 large bony crests on top. And although this is its most iconic feature, we're not entirely sure what they were used for. We definitely know they were not used as weapons, because they're extremely brittle and most likely couldn't do any damage without hurting the Dilo itself. And we know that whatever we have, the horns must have been bigger, because most animals don't have exposed bone. You would have like keratin or something like as a sheath over it. My favorite theory is that they were used for identification and or mating. Since we found 3 specimens next to each other, it's safe to assume that they were pack animals and would use this possibly bright colored appendage to identify each other. Or, if they were like more modern birds, it could be used to show sexual dimorphism, and the males could have like a much brighter horn than the females, or vice versa. We just don't know. But it's fun to think about this like giant horrifying dinosaur having like a very pretty like top on it, Moving down to the skull, Dilos had a pretty brittle skull with sharp, serrated, semi-interlocking teeth. And the top jaw had this weird notch that kind of like separated like the front teeth from a little bit of like the midway teeth, which would have been ideal for catching small prey. Now, putting all these features together, some paleontologists theorize that Dilos may have mostly hunted fish, and this interlocking jaw with the little notch would have made it ideal for just grabbing fish quickly and like making sure they couldn't get away. But due to other fossils having lacerations in their bones that match Dilos, we know that if they did hunt fish, it definitely wasn't their only source. They would just have to be extremely careful, because like if they were going after like a big predator, their skull and even their horns were just extremely brittle. Moving down the body, unlike Boris Johnson, Dilos most likely didn't have neck frills. I'm sorry. This was added into the movie version of Jurassic Park for possibly two different reasons. The first reason could be that when they were doing the cloning process, the Dilo may have used like frilled lizard DNA to help fill in some of the holes that were missing. Or, and the most likely reason, it looked cool. I mean, you know. Either way, we are fairly confident they didn't have them or venom glands, but there's always a chance. I did look up whether or not we've ever had any concrete proof of any dinosaurs having venom, and it's still kind of up in the air. Once paleontologists, I believe in China, found a dinosaur bone that had like the fossils, like teeth were kind of like misjointed, and he said that this could have been so that they could have venom glands around the teeth. But other people have pointed out this could just be the teeth falling out like post-mortem. So, no concrete evidence, and I don't think anything like that would survive the fossilification process. But other than that, the neck was extremely strong, since it had to hold the Dilo's gargantuan head. But the vertebra was also hollow and lightweight, so also extremely fragile. And so far, this gives the Dilo a very like top-heavy look. And like many theropods, the head was the first thing to come into contact with any predators or prey. Moving on down, the rib cage was also light, and they're often described as being barrel-chested. Now, their arms are interesting. They were long and powerful with 4 fingers. The first finger was short but strong with a large claw. The second finger was longer and slender with a more curved claw. The third finger was similar to the second one but only shorter. And finally, the fourth finger was basically vestigial, and it had no claw and most likely had no purpose. And the Dilo also had an amazingly versatile shoulder bone, which would allow for a much larger range of motion than we see in other theropods. With these well-developed arms, Dilos could potentially hold objects with one or both hands, pick up food and move it to its mouth, scratch itself, and swing its arms. And even flap its arms if it had feathers. However, the strange thing about its arms is that if the Dilo was running after like a large prey, the arms were too short to like make contact with the prey first, since again, its neck was so long. Now, if the fishing hypothesis is correct, then these hook claws could have been used to snatch up fish, or to just simply hold them still while they're eating. Moving to the hip area, like the T-Rex, Dilophosuarus also had a strong pubic bone that was most likely used for resting, but like the rest of the body, the pelvis was ultimately pretty weak. And the legs were powerful and ideal for hosting large muscles for running. The femur was slightly longer than the tibia, and some researchers theorize that the Dilo could run up to 20 miles per hour, which is as fast as a car going 20 miles per hour. Who wrote this? Huh. Personally, I kind of think maybe they could run faster, but it's hard to tell. I mean, I don't know, I keep comparing them to ostriches, and ostriches can run like 40 miles per hour, but hey, you know what? Who am I to judge? And like most theropods, they had 3 clawed toes that were slightly curved on each foot. And finally, The tail was extremely long and most likely was used to help counterbalance the huge head at the front. And interestingly enough, when examining some Dilo tracks, we can see that the tip of the tail dragged across the ground. And we have so many well-preserved tracks of Dilos. Like, they've just been such a huge help to help us understand this dinosaur and many others. Like, we know how they walk, how they rested. I mean, we even have a butt print of one. Like, that's amazing. Now, in Jurassic Park, the Dilo was covered in green scales. And we don't really have any way of knowing whether or not that's true. But there has been a huge debate on whether or not the Dilos were covered in feathers. Etchings in the ground around the fossils suggest that the Dilo could have been covered in a soft, downy-like coat. However, some paleontologists do point out that these etchings could have been caused by small little micro movements during decay and are not actual proof of feathers. Now personally, when I was a kid, I was all for scaly dinos, but as an adult, I love the idea of them being just covered in like these beautiful ornate feathers. So all in all, what we have here is a 20-foot long, 900-pound fuzzy ostrich that is running at least 20 miles per hour with his boys towards you and your goldfish. And brother, they're hungry. With that visualization, it's not hard to see that the Dilophosaurus was the apex predator of its generation. So brother, that's not a crest on its head, it's a crown. Believe it or not, the Dilo has made a huge cultural impact, both modern and historical. I think paleontologist Adam Marsh said it best when he described the Dilo as being the best, worst known dinosaur. Thanks to the lesser known 1993 film known as Jurassic Park, the Dilophosaurus is now a staple in dinosaur culture. And because of all the creative liberties they took, for a while, every adaptation of the Dilo, whether it be in movies, TV shows, games, what have you, they all showed it as a small frilled dinosaur that spit venom. I mean shoot, when I used to play Ark Survival Evolved, I almost got in trouble with the server admins we were in, because I was breeding way too many of these little guys and used them as turrets. I can explain. Remember Jesse Williams, the man who discovered and showed a group of paleontologists the first 3 specimens of the Dilophosaurus? Well, during the extraction process, Mr. Williams left once they got to the part of brushing the bones off. He would eventually come back several days later, but this did strike the crew as odd, and some were even insulted that he stopped helping them. But he most likely left because this was the part in the excavation process where you would have to physically touch the bones. You see, in Navajo belief, dinosaur fossils are highly respected. They believe that these giant monsters were beaten into the earth after being defeated by great warriors, and that the spirit of these monsters remained where their bones were, trapped within the earth. And even though they were seen as monsters, they still deserved respect and were seen as part of the natural world. So for centuries, the Navajo tribe would protect and keep track of dinosaur fossils as well as tracks in their area. One of these tracks is called the Place of the Bird Track, and it is footprints of a Dilophosaurus. See, that's how you name something, okay? Place of the Bird Track tells me exactly what I want. SGDS18T1 sounds like a microwave, alright? Come on guys. And it was because of the Navajo people's dedication to preserving these fossils and tracks that modern paleontology knows as much as we do now, and I feel like it's borderline criminal that I don't hear anyone talk about it. But it's also not all rainbows and sunshine, because there's actually a huge debate on whether or not the original 3 specimens were taken legally or illegally. Some members of the Navajo tribe have such high respect for fossils that they believe removing or even just uncovering the bones can be seen as disrespectful because you're taking them from the earth. Now, others, believe that extraction and study is extremely valuable to our understanding, and they're okay with that, but still you must do it the proper way with the proper respects. And in 1998, Navajo leaders stated that the 3 original specimens were removed without permission and, to add insult to injury, were taken out of the state to be presented in a different museum instead of a local one. So some members of the tribe would have been not okay with them taking the fossils out, and other members of the tribe were like, hey, we get it, it's part of the scientific process. But none of them would have been okay with just completely taking them away from the land. Now, the group of paleontologists who extracted these fossils swear up and down that they did get permission, and personally, I did some research. I can't find any concrete proof if they did or didn't. I mean, hindsight's 20/20, but the best thing they could have done was probably take plaster molds of the fossils and then leave them there. Or if they really did need to take them out, maybe put them in a museum close to the Navajo land. And I did see a couple articles that said that the paleontologists didn't respect the Navajo beliefs purposefully. And again, I'm not going to assume anything of anybody, because to me it seemed like they did like Mr. Williams. But after this issue was brought up, it was agreed that all future fossil hunts will be conducted with the official permission from the Navajo Nation Minerals Department. So I'm very glad that we learned from our mistakes. Well, that's about all I got. As always, this was super fun to research, and just like my past dinosaur video, there's always so much to learn once you deep dive into a topic. I would also like to give a shout out to YouTuber Zwernos, Z. Z left several comments on one of my videos, and I was laying in bed doom scrolling on my phone when I read them, and I was like, you know what? I should make a video about Dilos. I love those things. So thank you, Z. I really appreciate that. And I would also really like to thank the manga. I know, right? A manga, right? Dinosaur Sanctuary. It's actually really good. If you're a dinosaur fan and you're a manga fan, I highly recommend it. They have a whole chapter about Dilos, and I actually base my Dilo model off of theirs because again, it's just so good. And what I really like about Dinosaur Sanctuary is the author consults with a real paleontologist, and at the end of every chapter they have a whole little explanation from the paleontologist as to why they drew the dinosaur a certain way or had them act a certain way, and it's really cool. It's entertaining and educational. Definitely recommend it. But thanks for watching. I really appreciate all y'all. Jesus loves you. Please drink plenty of water, and I will see y'all later. Bye, guys.